Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, as you all know, in a pre-pandemic world, can you remember what that was? This show was often on the road, and I recorded episodes at tech conferences and show floors in everywhere from Armenia to Arizona. But then the pandemic hit and everything went virtual, and I've attended good and bad virtual events and done everything from whiskey and wine tasting and even a cup of tea and biscuits at one of them. But I've always been left feeling that something's missing. And I think that is those moments of serendipity, of just bumping into a random stranger in a queue for a keynote or waiting for a coffee and just end up chatting for 10 minutes. And with that in mind, I recently read about how Hoyin had a very similar feeling when he left an online meeting, and he couldn't shake that feeling that, again, he couldn't connect with people in the same way that he could connect with someone in the real world. And worse yet, when he looked down at his smartphone, he noticed that social media had actually become antisocial. So he found himself asking a simple question. What is stopping us from cultivating online relationships that are every bit as deep, meaningful and enriching as the relationships that we develop in person? So from there, he set out to transform the experience of connecting, communicating and collaborating with people across the globe by humanizing online interactions with technology. And from that story alone, Hoyin is tailor-made for this podcast. It's everything that we talk about on this show. So I invited him on the show today to learn more about his story and the online interactive events platform that is trying to connect people in a more authentic way. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Hong Kong, where Hoyin is waiting to speak with us to share his story. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Thank you so much, Neil. Really happy to be on your podcast. So my name is Hoyin. I am the founder of Remo. We are a immersive virtual event platform. We're map-based, meaning that it is a little bit like a game. You have a little circle avatar, and you get to kind of move around this map, move from one table to the next. And what we're really good at is we're really good at building and creating authentic conversations. Our mission is to create authentic conversations that build meaningful relationships. And we've essentially kind of cracked the code on how to create these kind of serendipitous sort of meetups and serendipitous sort of like collisions of people when they come together and network. And we've been very successful at that. We are the number one map-based virtual events platform globally right now. And so we're super excited to be on this podcast with you, Neil.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to learning more about how you do this because, like you say, when everyone's working from home, I think it's those moments of serendipity, bumping into someone at the coffee machine or the water cooler moment. That's the stuff that we all miss. And that's where big problems usually get solved. But before we go there, I've got to ask, can you share your origin story, where your passion for tech came from, and what put you on this path you're on today? What made you want to go out there and crack that code?
It first started off when I've been running remote teams for like over 8 years now.
Yeah.
So I remember when I first ran my first remote team, I was using Skype back then. There was no Slack. There was no, all these fancy tools. And it was hard to like kind of, as we know now, it's hard to communicate and talk to people. We were just chatting. Like we never really had calls that much. I didn't really, it was very difficult to meet them and know them as a person, as a human being. And what happened was I lost several people because of that, because we didn't build a relationship. And so what I realized was that for remote work, it's absolutely important that you have to build relationships. And the only way is to create a space where I was trying to create a space where people can come and work together. And that's what we originally created. It was a virtual office. So it's like a map with rooms, and you can just kind of pop into a room and then say hi to someone and then drop in and say, hey, I'm looking for you, and then leave. And so we originally developed this. We tried to sell it in January of 2019, and it was really difficult to sell. remote work was just a fringe trend. The market was very small, and it was difficult to convince people to buy. And so we partnered up with this one individual who ran virtual summits. And back in the day, virtual events were called virtual summits.
Yeah.
And we said, hey, it's about remote work. Why don't we collaborate? I will modify my virtual office product to a conference. And maybe when they feel and use the conference product, they'll think, all right, this is a great idea for my virtual office. So we had 10,000 people across 3 days. And at the end of the 3 days, not a single person bought our virtual office. But everyone said, oh my gosh, this Remo experience is amazing. I want to host a conference and event on Remo. How can I do that tomorrow? And I said, don't know what you're talking about. We can't do it right now because we originally built it for the virtual office. And he said, I would love to pay you. I would love to work with you. When can I get my hands on this? And that's when we felt, hey, maybe there's something here. And we ended up pivoting into the virtual event space because of this sort of half experimentation. And then we were growing at about 10-15% month over month in 2019. I did a lot of podcasts like this. I did a lot of kind of putting myself out there, putting the product out there. And we're very lucky that we were one of the few platforms right at the beginning of the pandemic that everyone just talked about. And so it was a little bit of luck, a little bit of serendipity that led us here.
Well, that path led you to Remo here in 2021, and it's evolved along the way and along that journey. And I'm sure you get this a lot, but here in 2021, how would you, for anybody listening that are hearing about Remo for the first time, how would you introduce them to it and the problems that you're solving right now?
So essentially what Remo is like, we're trying to humanize like online interaction. You can say it in a simple way, is we're trying to make you feel as human as possible online. We're trying to essentially, like, at the bottom of it is, at the crux of it is, we're trying to make you trust people more easier online. Because you can only develop a relationship if you trust someone, if you feel like you can trust them and you can go have another call with them. So it's an experiential platform where we're trying to solve the ability for people to make relationships more easier, and network with each other through events. So we solve kind of like networking in general, but we can also do like these sort of classic webinars. So we're an events platform where we can do these classic webinars that has these networking sessions before and after this webinar. And that allows people to feel like, hey, this is very similar to the real world environment. I can network a little bit, go into an event, and then network again. And that's kind of the goal in terms of what we're really good at.
And then, of course, the pandemic thrust everyone into the world of video calls. But when I was doing a bit of research, I read how you felt that when we went into that Microsoft Teams and Zoom world, etc., that we'd almost lost a bit of authenticity in the conversations that we were having. Can you expand on that and the feeling that you had there?
To me, I think it's just a little bit of it's a difference. It's a difference of, like, for example, if you're going to go to a nice swanky event, are you going to prefer to go to a nice hotel with a nice lounge or a nice lobby, or would you rather go to an event in a boardroom? And to me, Microsoft Teams and Zoom is a boardroom. Yeah. It's great for meetings, but it's not appropriate for every single situation. And when it comes to events are highly experiential. You don't go to an event if it's some boring, place with white walls and ugly decor. You want to go to a nice place and have nice drinks, have a nice meal, and it's very experiential. And so we tap into that part of humanizing the whole experience. And so it's not productivity. It's not collaboration. Collaboration and productivity are very like business terms. Like, okay, I'm in the office and I'm going to collaborate. I'm in the office, so I'm going to have a meeting. Yeah. It's all about, hey, I'm having a drink. Hey, cheers. How's it going? Hey, how are you? It's very free flowing, a bit lighthearted. It's, listening to something serious, but afterwards, like, hey, how's it going, mate? Like, how you doing? I want to, like, that is human. It's a bit more, that's the key difference.
Yeah, and as someone that was going to a lot of events all around the world and reporting on tech conferences and then thrust into the world of virtual events, a lot of them didn't work. And there's a lot of people that are trying extra hard, and I've done everything from virtual wine tasting and whiskey tasting, where they send a package for the welcome meeting to the event. So there's a lot of good work being done here. But how are you making virtual events authentic again with your technology at Remo?
So the way how we're doing is like the way how our product's been designed is we really focus on like just creating an amazing guest experience. And what that means is that like when people come in, they feel like they're entering an event. So when you come in, you're kind of expected to turn on your microphone and your camera.
Yeah.
That is really, really key. And therefore you're expected to interact. So the expectation that's being set is entirely different. You're not like going in there and just passively listening. You're going in there and actually having a conversation. It's like, if you attended a physical event, you're kind of expected to like, when someone says hi to you or gives out their hand, you're expected to shake your hand and, have some social etiquette and like, interact with people. But there's a lot of, virtual platforms out there, which are great at what they do, but they don't expect you to turn on your microphone and camera. So automatically they're already saying you don't have to interact with anyone. You can just chill and sit back and just watch a movie and just chill, watch a YouTube video.
Yeah.
Well, if you're going to create that kind of tenor, that kind of vibe for someone, then people are going to sit back and just relax and maybe pay attention, maybe look at their email, maybe look at their phone, maybe check out, the Premier League score. Like they're not going to be fully focused. They're going to look at, you're already setting the tone. So we set the tone right from the beginning that you're here to engage. And that produces all of the authenticity. The great thing about us is we're not forcing people. We're not saying you have to. It's like you go to a physical event, no one forces you to go talk to people.
Yeah.
But there's a peer group expectation that if you came here, then you're expected to do something. There's certain expectations of what you have to do. And we align with those types of expectations.
And we will have a lot of business leaders listening all over the world. And I suspect that a lot of what you just said will really resonate with them, especially if they're looking to create their own virtual event. So can you walk me through a use case or a client story of something that you've created that would just bring to life what we're talking about here and help those business leaders listening understand the scale of the problems that you set out to solve and what you're creating here?
We have a very large European airline that is our customer, and they use us for a lot of internal training and workshops. So they use it for a lot of internal meetings because internal meetings become very boring with Zoom. So they need something else to engage their staff in order to learn. So they use us for town halls, for trainings and workshops. So that's for internal. We have we have like a 3D printing company, and also like large, like a Japanese electronics company as well. They use us for external events. So they would bring in some of like their customers. They will educate them through the webinar portion of our product. They will educate them. And then after that, they would then encourage everyone to network with each other. People from the company, the customers, they're networking, everyone's networking. And that is, you're not just creating value. It's not a one-sided value. It's like people are meeting each other and creating that, which is what most people do for physical events. Like that's how most companies are trying to achieve. We can do that virtually. So it's a networking plus some kind of talk sort of event. And it's for the industry. It's a topic that the industry wants to listen to. And this can be done for a global, worldwide audience.
And I'm curious, do you get to hear any feedback stories or feedback from companies about what they thought of Remo? Obviously, you don't need to mention any names, but are you close to get to hear those stories and the kind of things that people are saying?
Yeah, I mean, some things that people say are like companies love that their guests will come to them and say, "Oh, I met so and so, and now we're doing business together." Oh, I met this other person who I didn't know, but was actually connected to me by like 3 degrees of separation. I actually know this person, but I never met them. they've had people that come up to them that said, hey, we met, there's like a bunch of ladies that met at one of the events, and they came up to one of our customers and said, hey, did you know that we met at your event? And now we have our own mastermind that we meet on a weekly basis, and we still meet. And like when the host heard about that, she was like, wow, I can't believe that you can actually build these real relationships online. Like people are actually meeting and developing long-term relationships that benefit, and these are all kind of like in our customer base, and they're able to help each other out. And that increases retention, that increases, word of mouth, that increases everything. It makes a better community in general. So those are some things.
I love that. And I love what you've created here. And it's so refreshing to hear, especially in a world where technology is often blamed for polarizing and dividing people. And as a result, I think many are beginning to question the time that they're spending on social media sites. And on that front, I read that you thought that social media is almost becoming anti-human, and we're losing that authentic conversation that builds meaningful relationships. So can you expand on that and some observations that you're seeing around that?
My kind of feeling is that like, social media is a very text-based sort of method of interacting with each other. And because it's text-based, a lot of things are kind of abstracted out. Like you don't really see the person when they type it. There's a lot of separation. It's almost like everyone is posting on this board what they think, but you never see them post it on the board. Like they're posting a little piece of paper and they're posting on this board. Everyone sees the board, but no one sees who's posting it. And so you're just using words to communicate. And we all know that sometimes words can be misconstrued. It can cause conflict. It can cause miscommunication. And it's not always the best way to communicate, especially about sensitive topics. We all know this. We say, hey, you know what? We need to talk in person. We probably shouldn't talk on the phone, da, 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 da. But we're having all these really deep philosophical, political, emotional, sensitive discussions on a platform with just text. And so how do we expect the right discourse to really happen if the communication method that we're doing is not necessarily the best? And so my opinion is I think social media has a great way of doing certain things, but it's a great way to let people know, but it's not a good place for deep discussion in general. But we're using that for deep discussion and polarizing deep discussion that ends up dividing us more than it, joins us together. And so that kind of drove me to kind of think what was missing. And in my opinion, what was missing was that authentic conversation. You're not having an authentic conversation. You're having just a textual exchange. And that's it. That's not human. People don't typically do this. And so therefore, therefore it doesn't really work. Letters, right, were used to be written in the old days, but they were extremely formal. Why? Because you don't want to get into like super deep things with letters back in the day. And so therefore, I believe that like that authenticity is definitely like, we need to strive for more for that. And that's why like Facebook and, all these like other platforms, I just fundamentally feel that, there needs to be a change in the way how people interact. And that's why I think virtual events is a much more better option.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And they often say it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And if you're having a text conversation in an email or a text message or a social media platform, there's no intonation there. You can't tell how that person is trying to make that point. And something I always try and do on this podcast is talk about how technology works best when it brings people together. So if we assume we can break that spell with social media, what is it that excites you about how technology will help us better collaborate, communicate, and work together? And what role do you see Remo playing in that future too?
Yeah, so to me, technology is not supposed to replace human.
Yeah,
the things that make us human. That's not what technology is for, because it just can't do that right now. Maybe sometime in the future, but just not right now. So, but the problem is that we're using technology to replace those things. That's a problem. And when you do that, that causes a lot of weird things to happen. Like in Facebook, like all this echo chamber stuff that's happening, and people having their own ideas of what reality, like different versions of reality. What excites me about technology is that most of the time what technology does is it's a cheaper way to do something. It's a scaling function. It scales something that was used to be done manually but now can be done way more cheaply at a much more larger scale. That's typically the best use of what technology is. Machine learning, AI, it's always something cheaper. In that sense, what I think virtual events and Remo is doing is that it's trying to scale out the ability to have a little bit better authentic conversation, not up to the level of person to person, but a little bit better to the entire world, into the entire, for example, like if you're in the UK, there's this great startup event you want to go to or about a certain topic, but you live in Greenland. How can I go there? Even if in post-pandemic, it is hard. But now today, you can attend that event and network with people in that summit, which you would never have attended otherwise. You're in this small town in the middle of nowhere in Greenland, for example, but now you can't. Now technology has democratized that, has lowered the barrier to allow people to do that. That to me is inspiring. That to me is amazing. And Remo is allowing people to make those connections, deeper connections at scale, and making it more accessible, where you would not have been able to attend after all. We're not so valuable, for example, if you're hosting an event in London and you're just targeting people in London.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm having an event, let's get together, blah, blah, blah. Remo will not work there. It does not make sense. You should not use Remo. If someone said use Remo, I'd be like, what the hell are you doing? Just host a normal event. I would tell them to do that because you need to use the most highest resolution of communication that's most easily accessible by people. And in that situation, people just go to a venue in London and then interact. And that's the best and most easiest way.
I love that. And I love your whole journey and everything you've achieved here. And we did start today's conversation talking about your origin story. And I'm going to end now on that and try and have a bit of fun with you and ask you what has been the soundtrack to your journey in tech. Is there a particular song that or piece of music that you like to that inspires you, has accompanied you on your career, or just helps you get your head in the zone? Is there a song and story you can share with us? And we'll add that song to our Spotify playlist.
Well, I don't have like one that is tied to the business, so to speak, but I do have a song that I think it really, it's not really tied to the business. It's just a song that I do like, gets me into the zone. It's 24 Karat Magic by Bruno Mars.
Love it. Well, I'll get that added to our playlist. And for anyone listening that wants to find out more information about Remo, contact your team, see a video of it in action, what's the best starting point for that?
So the best starting point is go to remo.co, remo.co. And you can then go to any kind of guided tour. We have guided tours to help you out, product demos. And we have a contact specialist forum. You can also send us a message on the chat on the website. I also have my LinkedIn, which I can share as well. I'm starting to get really post a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, which shares a lot of kind of the things I've talked about and expanding more into that. So if you guys are open to that, please let me know.
Excellent. I'll add those links to the show notes. I've loved chatting with you today, learning more about, how the pandemic thrust everyone into the world of video calls, and we did lose a bit of authenticity along the way. But the great work that you're doing here, and I always say technology works best when it brings people together, and I love how you're using virtual events to make it authentic again. It's fantastic. I'd love to stay in touch with you, see where this journey takes you, and maybe get you back on the show next year. But More than anything, thank you for sharing your story with me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
What a great guy. And a discussion about how COVID purgatory that we're all in now with a new Delta variant plus doing the rounds, and how social media has almost become anti-human, and how we lost authentic conversations that build those meaningful relationships. But of course, more than anything, how Remo is leveraging technology to create online interactive events that connect people in a more authentic way. And I've said it several times already, but I'll say it again. Technology works best when it brings people together. And for me, Remo is living and breathing that ethos. And for those reasons alone, it's an absolute pleasure to have Hoyin on the podcast today, sharing that story. But over to you. Do you have any examples of how we can use technology to connect in a more authentic way? To connect, communicate, collaborate with people all over the world, but humanise those online interactions? For me, there's two people that stand out. Hoyin today with what he's doing. There's Sarah Elkins, who's a big friend of mine in the US, and she created the No Longer Virtual event, where she gets all her online connections from around the world and gets them into one room. Two great people using technology to bring people together, but I want to know how you're doing it and your plans for the future. And this is where you've heard from me, you've heard from today's guest, but this podcast is not about me or the guest, it's about you. And I want to get your insights and experiences on this show. And whether that be a simple email to techblogwriter@outlook.com, a DM on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram at Neil C. Hughes, or coming on this podcast and having a conversation like this with me. Whatever is easiest for you. So on that note, I'm going to just say a huge, genuine thank you for listening to this show, for being a part of the podcast. And I'll invite you to join me again tomorrow where we will do it all again. But it's time for me to go now. So until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.